Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy, and today we have another incredible guest. I love bringing on people from all different walks of life, people who have accomplished different things and are really focused on different aspects. They're bringing their light, their love to the world in different ways, fulfilling and sharing with other people. So Billy Bross is his name, and you're going to want to go follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, these places. But he loves just helping online education companies and course creators break through the noise and fill their programs with committed, high quality content and students, right? So part of it's getting the students in, part of it's making sure their content's ready for that. He left a really great career, honestly, in renewable energy industry to go full-time into his side hustle, his hobbies, and ultimately his passion. So that's what I love about the people that I'm bringing on is they've made that transition and they're able to give us light and knowledge as far as how we can make that transition in our own life. He also runs an online home beer brewing school. So if you've ever wondered how to make your own brews, then go check him out. I mean, he's awesome. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn the time over to him because I want him to be able to share his story and why he made the transition, how he made it, and how did he know when it was the right time to take that leap, quit his promising career, and jump in full-time to what he loved doing. So Billy, thank you for being on here. I'm excited to hear your thoughts and what we can do to become or follow in your footsteps.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me, Samuel. And yeah, if anyone needs a good beer brewing recipe, then I'm your guy. Hit me up. Are you a craft beer fan, Samuel?
I actually don't drink alcohol at all, but I have family members who do, and I know a lot of people who do. So
yeah, you're probably smart. Yeah, it wasn't. We'll talk about the business. It was a lot of fun, although it wasn't the healthiest business to run. Yeah. So thanks for having me again. And yeah, so I'm not the typical entrepreneur. I very much liked school, and a lot of entrepreneurs you hear dropped out of high school or they kind of bash college and they say just get out there and start selling stuff and growing businesses. I actually liked learning, and that's a theme that you're going to hear from me. I love education. I'm very curious. I've always loved learning new topics. I remember in 5th grade, I was really into reading Popular Science magazine, and I would only read 2 parts. I would read the very front and the very back. And in the front, they always had this section called What's New, and it's about all the cool new scientific and technology fields. And then in the back, it was always the classified section. And there were always like these really like kind of interesting, quirky ads. And I was always like, oh, that's kind of cool. You can build a helicopter and that you can fly around. You can like buy a DIY kit on how to do that. That's really interesting. So I've always been interested in both science and also in business and creating new ventures. So I went through all of high school, went through college, and then I went to grad school and got my MBA. So took the very traditional path, but when I got that first job, which was a great career, and I'll go into that, when I sat down that very first day at that desk after my boss, remember he gave me a tour of the office and everything, and then finally sat me down and I was like, okay, now this is, assuming I don't do anything and I just stay the path, this is my life. I'm going to be at this desk an awful lot. And I was excited to be there, but at the same time, I said to myself, this ain't going to last too long. And so it wasn't too long after that I started on the side, because I had this free time during nights and weekends, I started a beer brewing blog. So I got really into brewing craft beer in college, really geeked out on it like I do with a lot of things. and decided to start writing about it and posting homebrewing tips and videos and things like that. So eventually that was what allowed me to, this was 6 years later, jump ship. When I was finally ready to leave that job and that career, I had this side hustle going, as you mentioned, and that was what enabled me to really forge my own path.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, because I mean, I know you say you're a proponent of education and schooling. Where would you, I mean, do you feel like there's a line between schooling and education?
Is there, well, you can certainly have education without, depends on what type of schooling you're talking about. And I think there certainly is a place for traditional education, but I think I know the whole industry is getting disrupted right now. And I work with, because I work with online educators now, online experts, teacher entrepreneurs who are working in these areas. Well, for example, I have one online school I'm working with, and they teach artists. So digital artists mainly, people who do concept art for movies and video games. And traditionally, they would have to go to a university to get these skills and pay $100,000, and then they're not guaranteed anything afterwards, not guaranteed an income or jobs. And now you have this online school who I'm helping, and they help these artists. And they do it through $500,000, sometimes a little bit higher price courses, still a premium price for online, but much cheaper than $100,000 for a traditional university. And the best part is these course creators are practitioners in their field. So they're in the trenches. They're working in this area. And so they can tell their students how to succeed, not just in their craft, but in the business side of their craft, which is so important. And now they're even starting to pass on jobs to their students as well. So, you know, there's certainly there are places for traditional education. I mean, if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to become a doctor, certain fields like that, engineering. But for some of these other fields, that's not necessarily the best path.
Yeah, I think because of how you caveat it, like, oh, I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that bags on it. I think that from my experience, all I do pretty much is interview entrepreneurs of some sort, CEOs, people who are successful in business, or on the other side, mothers, father, and just like, I guess I do interview a wide range of people. But I think most of the entrepreneurs that I interview, although I would consider myself in this category, I bag on traditional education to a degree, but only to the extent of, I think that you could go get the same or better education from an online course with somebody who is still practicing in the industry and has some real life experience over going to a college where that may or may not be the case as far as practicing. And as you said, now you walk away with $100,000 of either spent money or debt with no guarantee of a job. And so I think that's where, at least in my experience of talking to people, that's where most of the, if you want to call it animosity, comes from in that conversation. It's not that they think that to become a doctor, you shouldn't go have somebody practice and teach you that. But even with that, being a doctor, being a lawyer,
I would hope not.
True, but I would say even with that, there's a lot of people who have gone through all of that education, formal education, to get their degrees, and in the process, they found that they actually are better able to serve clients or patients by using methods that aren't necessarily taught in school, but to be able to use those methods, they have to have the credentials. And then they end up going off and doing functional medicine, which they could have done. They just wouldn't have had the licenses to do so without the formal education. So it's an interesting balance. I think education is everywhere. I don't think you should go fail. I shouldn't. How do I say that? I think failure is essential. Okay, so yeah. I think we should be willing to fail, but fail different than the people in the past. Like if you're going through and you're making all the same mistakes that everybody else made, you didn't learn anything.
Yeah,
exactly. At some point you need to go and create your own and this is one good thing that I think I gained from public, like from my college years, that I don't know where I would have got this otherwise. Sure, there's places, but how to conduct effective research is a very, like, if there's nothing else you learn, that's a pretty dang good thing to learn. So you can actually read medical journals and say, okay, how are these samples done? How are they using statistics? How are they doctoring statistics? Not just medically, but business wise. If you're walking into a business and we're a $4 million company, and you're like, okay, and you have $10,000 extra every month because your operating costs are like, you're barely surviving. It doesn't matter that you're making $4 million of revenue if 3,900,000, whatever, if it's all going out in expenses, you're struggling, right? One bad month and you guys fold. That's different than somebody who's netting $4 million every year, So being able to read statistics, read and be able to research stuff, I think is important in that. So that's something I feel like I've gained effective from there. When you're helping somebody build effective content, what does that look like?
Well, the important thing is to always start with the audience. So this is a trap that and I fell into this trap too, that a lot of experts and people who are just subject matter experts, people who know a lot about their topic, they become obsessed with the topic and obsessed with the content. But it's that whole if you build it, they will come thing not being true when it comes to selling education online. A lot of people think it is, though. So you want to find products and content for your audience, not customers or an audience for your content. And there's a big difference there. So the most important thing is to focus on what is the problem to be solved, or what is the thing that they want. And then try to, in as few steps as possible. That's a big mistake too. You don't want to people are overwhelmed with information. You don't want to just dump a bunch of encyclopedias on their lap. So you want to get them from where they are now to that endpoint in as efficient a manner as possible.
I agree. And so with that, just because you have helped, over 500 companies accomplish this, how do you address it? I guess if it's online, but when you're doing online courses, what percentage of these online courses have an active teacher, somebody who's involved teaching in it, and what percentage is just recorded content, like an online course that's recorded and they're going to buy it, they're going to pay whatever, and it was made once, intellectual property, and they resell it multiple times without updating?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so it's shifted over the years. So it's very different than how it was when I first got started in 2009, 2010, where it was a lot more self-paced, more on-demand, more of a separation between the teacher and the students. And now what we're seeing, at least the model that we like, that we see working and that we teach, is more so that other end of the spectrum, where it more closely resembles a true college class or college semester, where you're taking people in, you're taking them through as a group. We often call it a cohort, kind of a nerdy term, but that's what we call it. And it can be 100% live teaching. It can be pre-recorded, plus maybe some office hours or some support calls. But usually there is some, I think going forward, the way of the future is there's got to be some kind of support, some kind of live interaction. Because if not, I mean, the number's right there. I mean, the lesson is right there in the data. In that only 1 to 3% of people actually complete online courses. And that's terrible. It's terrible all the way around. It's terrible for the students, and it's terrible for the teachers as well, and the entrepreneurs, because most of a business's revenue should be coming from repeat customers. Because the most expensive thing you can do in a business is get a new customer. So if they're failing at that initial product, if that initial product is not working for them, what are the chances that they come back for more?
I agree. Have you, I'm sure you have in this space, heard of Lightspeed VT?
Say it again?
Have you heard of Lightspeed VT?
Lightspeed, it rings a bell. I'm not too familiar with it though.
Brad Lee is the creator, CEO of the service. I would highly recommend looking it up. His service, what I like about his service, this is not necessarily a plug for him, but why not? If you're listening, you want to create an online course, why not plug the guy? He's awesome. Yeah. But it's very interactive. So unlike a typical video course where it's like you just watch it, hope they watched it, hope they got out of it, inside of the video, there's a lot of interactive things. You can click on it, and it's like building a sales funnel, but in video course form. So like I could be having this conversation and then say, and what level is your income? I'm in finance, so that makes sense, right? What level is your income? 50,000, whatever. So then they have 3 options. They pop up after me, and based on which button they push, then they're going to hear different content from me based on where their level of knowledge is at. Or it's going to re-loop them back to where they need to rehear what I just said, so we can test comprehension, can test, make sure that the people are getting what they need. Because you may have somebody who's taking an elective class or taking a course just because like they need the basics, but they already understand half of the content. Mm-hmm. And most courses, they make you go through the same path, and so they're only getting, like, everybody's getting the same cookie cutter information, rather than saying, okay, I want to buy this course on social media, for lack of a better word, right? There's people who don't even know that on social media, you should have all of your profile pictures be the same across social media. You should have all of your banner pictures be basically identical. You should have all of your descriptions about who you are. Like that's like step one before you get started on marketing, before you get started on any of that. Have uniformity. Like that's important. So that person, maybe that's where they're at. Well, the other person may already have all that done, already have been paying for ads for a while, but just needs to know how to write more effective copy, right? And so for that person, they can go through and get the first half of the course done. They still get credit for it, whatever, but they get the first half of the course done super fast because they have advanced through that and they already know it. And then they can move on to the part that they actually want to do faster, versus having a course where they're bored for the first half of the semester, lose interest before they actually get the content that they wanted, and then they don't complete it. So anyways, it's
personalized learning paths. No, those are excellent. Yeah. And it's one of the cool things you can do with online education technology, and it's a great way to increase results. So I love that. I'll check that out.
Yeah, he's a stud. He would be actually a good. He's super, super cool. If you reach out to him on Instagram, he's in Vegas, and he doesn't do interviews unless you come to his office. So that's a thing there. But he would be a great person, I think, for you to be on his podcast.
Cool. Yeah. I'll twist my arm. Go to Vegas. That doesn't sound bad.
Yeah. No. It's and he's super chill, and he also, I shouldn't say he loves beer, but he drinks beer. So you'd have to be able to contact or like.
Sounds like my kind of guy.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's talk about this. When did you? I mean, you got out of. So you're working your corporate gig. You got out of beer. I mean, creation, I guess, craft beer education. So was that really the transition from? Like, how did you transition from your corporate job to teaching people how to create educational content?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I left the full-time job in the renewable energy industry to run this beer website. And so fortunately, again, I'm not the traditional entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs would have just jumped ship. I wanted to have money in my savings account. I wanted to have a decent amount of consistent income coming from that website. So I got to that point where I felt really confident that I could cut the cord with the full-time job and have a viable business. And unfortunately, that happened. But it was really more of a springboard, that website, into where I am now. My intention really wasn't to be the beer guy my whole life. That was just a cool project that I was working on, and I wanted the experience of doing it, and of course wanted to use it to leave my job. But I really missed working with other people on teams and collaborating with really smart people like I was doing. And I didn't have that anymore when I was running the beer website. So I started joining these online forums and communities and meeting other people like myself in all different niches. And even though a lot of them were beyond me, I could still notice things in their business, gaps, especially in their marketing, where I would say, hey, if you just move this thing over here, or just do this, or get this page up, it could really explode your growth. And so more and more of them started to reach out, and I started doing some consulting on the side. And that eventually became my main passion, helping people like myself who had the subject matter expertise, but didn't have the business expertise or the marketing expertise to get it out there. And because I had learned that, and I had this traditional business background, that combination of skills put me in a good position to help them. grow their business, and that's what led me to where I am today. So I sold the beer website actually a few years ago, so that's now in someone else's hands. But he's doing a good job with it. We're still in communication.
Good. Hopefully you turned a pretty penny. That's awesome. Building websites. I didn't know how, and I don't have anything that gets a ton of traffic, but you can just go buy URLs or domain names. And if you put something on there and get a little bit of traffic and build up the name on Google, that's a form of investing right there. It's kind of an interesting business model, but it's cool to see how much what I paid for my domains and then how much they've increased in value since I put content on their websites and had things pushed to them, created connections. So it's a cool thing to see. So I'm curious. I like the way you said this, I guess, is you had a bigger goal, and so many people, they think, oh, well, I'm in this business. For me, I work in finance, right? My objective is not, my objective is financial, but I'm in finance because of the bigger goal, right? The bigger goal for me being in finance is to help people with, as they understand how money works, then it decreases, statistically, it decreases causes of depression, anxiety, suicide, domestic violence, malnutrition. Those instances decrease when there's higher income, or at least understanding of how money works in a home. And so although I work in finance, that's not my main gig. My main gig is what it produces at the end. And I think that's important for people to understand, especially when they're trying to identify, well, do I jump ship? Do I go do my own thing? Well, what is it exactly that you're jumping ship from and to? I think that's a huge, huge, huge question to be answered before you quit your day job, before you go anywhere. What exactly are you jumping to? And as Billy said, he wasn't jumping to the beer company to become the beer guy. That wasn't his objective. He saw that as a project, as a current way of expressing himself in other forms of creation. And I think that's important because so many people will get fixated on a certain thing and they'll say, well, I don't know anything. I only know how to be a mom. I only know how to garden. I only know how to create videos. I only know how to make beer, right? And so they don't see their value outside of the task that they're doing. And this holds people back, so many people back, even in their corporate jobs, because they think I'm only good for what I'm being paid for, instead of recognizing that the value that they're adding to that company is so much more than the tasks that they're fulfilling. And if they were just to go market just the value that they're adding personally, they could probably increase their income. Even if they didn't want to change what they're doing, they could take that out of a corporation and go perform those tasks by themselves and be able to create the same or more income more regularly and be in more control of their income. So that's a huge thing. And then understanding that this happens, I would say this happened to me as well, especially with this podcast. This is kind of the germination of this podcast, is I was doing Facebook videos about different topics. Facebook Lives, I did them every day for I think a month. Did a month of Facebook Lives every day. And what I found was people were reaching out to me and saying, man, I would love to listen to all of your content, but I can't leave Facebook on all the time. You should turn it into a podcast. And I was like, oh, I never think about that, but I'll turn it into a podcast then. And so many times, think about what are you complimented on the most? What do people compliment you on? What do you think? What do people say, man, if I could just think like that, or if I could just do that? What is the most common thing that people say about you in that context? And then reach out to Billy and say, hey, Billy, how do I turn this into a course?
Yeah.
How do I turn this into an online course? Because clearly, if there's enough people who recognize my gifts, even though I don't recognize my gifts, how do I make this gift able to reach more people? And how do I monetize it?
Yeah.
Right? How many times does that happen to you where you have somebody who comes to you who wants to create a course, isn't quite sure exactly how to do it? They know their audience, they know what they're trying to teach, but they just have no idea how to monetize it and how to make it effective for their end consumer.
Oh, it happens all the time. Yeah, it happens all the time. And I'll tell you what I tell them. because the wrong way to go about it is to go disappear into your basement for 9 months and go record some amazing video course and spend a ton of money on software and lighting and microphones and all that stuff, editing, distribution, and just to find out that no one really wants the topic. No one really wants what's being offered. So this is good news. This is good news because you don't need to put so much pressure on yourself to have something completely polished and dialed in. The way to do it, especially now going forward, is to take that audience first approach, like I talked about. Start to build a following, get in the trenches with your audience, hop on the phone with them even. I talked to dozens of my customers and email subscribers when I was running that beer brewing website. Not selling anything, just hopping on the phone and just asking questions. And look, I was part of my market. I was brewing up a storm, right? Like, so I still, my mind was blown all the time, and I was surprised by the things that people would say and what their problems were. So don't fall into that curse of knowledge, where you think that you know it all. The market will tell you, and you'll often be surprised. And then just get something out there. Just get something out there. Take an iterative approach. And this is really my approach to life, and the value that I provide. And like what you were asking earlier, I mean, I see myself in a really strong point of leverage for two reasons. One is I think personal growth is the most important thing in the world, and one of the ways that we can solve a lot of the problems that we have in the world. Yes, there are a lot of problems with society and the economy and all that. But if everyone really focused on themselves and focused on if I focused on making myself better tomorrow than I am today, and I did that consistently every single day, if everyone did that, we'd be in a really, really good position. And one of the ways to do that is through education, through online learning, online courses. And it doesn't matter what niche you're in. What tends to happen if a person is improving in one area, even if it's something sort of like insignificant by most standards, like brewing beer, people don't think that's entirely a life-changing thing. But it is. And I would see how my students would come in and they would fall in love with this hobby. And that passion would exude from them, and it would spread to their family, their wife, their kids. They would all see it. And next thing you know, everything in the household is uplifted. Right? So that's one leverage point, working directly with them. But I took a step back and said, okay, let me work with the entrepreneurs and the teachers, the teacher entrepreneurs who serve them. And now we get into, so now I'm able to help them reach more people, so improve this collective personal growth going on throughout the world. And also, I'm a big believer in small businesses. They really are the engine of the economy. So I love working with entrepreneurs. They're the innovators. They're the job providers. They're the ones paying a whole lot of our tax dollars. So that's what gives me a lot of fulfillment. I see myself really in that great place of leverage, and it aligns with my values, the main one being personal growth.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is identifying, hey, what is your personal value and how are you aligning yourself with your personal value? I think so I have a journal that I created, but it's called The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. And the focus is identifying, hey, why would it be important for you to actually exceed or succeed in life in general? And it's part of a grander process of identifying your identity. And as you said, your values. For me, my core values are candor, integrity, and gratitude. Those are like more important than just about anything else. When I really analyze who I am without any fear of judgment for not saying God or saying family or whatever, right? Without any fear of judgment of anybody else, what am I personally, internally committed to more than anything else in my life? And it's those three values. And so I built my business, I built everything I do in my life, down to my marriage, my children, my everything, based on those three values, saying, look, these need to be present in everything I do or I'm not interested. And when you're looking at jumping ship or going to something new, again, be aware of what you're leaving and where you're going. And I'm sure, I want you to tell me some failure stories of people who have done this, what I'm about to describe. Hopefully you have some. If you don't, that's amazing, but I think you probably will. But people who they were doing this, they decided to create this course or education out of desperation, because rather than running towards what they were passionate about and running towards what they loved doing, they were running away from what they didn't like doing. And that distinction is huge. Just choosing to try and create, as you would say, try and create a product that you can sell just because you don't like what you're doing right now, your current work. That is not the way to move forward. It's not, I think it has a short lifespan. You're not going to be a long-lasting educator or innovator or anything. But if you are passionate about something and you're running towards what you like, you're going to have different results. So tell me a story of where you've had somebody who is running from something rather than towards something.
Yeah. Well, I can give you my own example.
Sure.
Personal example. Yeah. So when I made that transition from running the beer site to doing consulting full time, I was doing some service provider work. So I wasn't just consulting. I was also helping people build and maintain their Facebook ad campaigns. And the natural path, and so I eventually pulled back from that, because the natural path, if you start doing that, is to grow an agency. So you start to look at, okay, how can I get more clients? How can I do a better job with this? And you're just going to wind up in that agency playground. Turns out I really didn't want to run an agency. It just, it doesn't align with what I enjoy doing. It's not me. I'm much more of a strategist, much more of an architect. I don't want a big team or anything like that. It just didn't match up with the lifestyle that I wanted. And I always start with the lifestyle and reverse engineer that. So I started to go down that path, but then quickly pulled back because I had that feeling like, yeah, I can deliver value here, but this isn't my zone of genius. So a lot of my life has been like that, testing different things, seeing how it feels. Sometimes you just have to, right? Like I didn't know what that day-to-day was like. It looked good on paper, running an agency, getting a lot of clients. But when I was actually in the trenches of it, I said, nah, that doesn't feel so hot. Let me go back this other direction.
Yeah. I think that's huge. Being able to determine and decipher between that. What are you running from something? You're running to something, and making sure you're running to something that you love and that you're going to bring the light and joy into the world, not just from what you don't like, because it's just barely. I haven't seen it pan out very well for many people, and it's good that you were able to recognize that before you got too deep into something you hated and decided to. You never know what happens, honestly. So I'm curious, when you did make the jump, though, what was your who were your biggest naysayers saying, no, don't do that? Why are you giving up this great job? Tell us the story of your biggest naysayers and how you overcame them.
I have been really fortunate in that I've always had a tremendous support system. I really can't think of one person I'm close to. I can't even think of one person who said, you're dumb, don't do that, don't leave that full-time job, it's great. Everyone was just like a really great cheerleader, just hell yeah, Billy, go for it. So I've never had anyone say that, fortunately. But I have had haters. You wouldn't believe it, but running a beer website, you get haters. It's like, I remember I did some videos about a beer cocktail, and it was some British one, and I guess they're very strict about how they make these beer cocktails where you mix two beers together, or a beer and some other. It's kind of a silly thing, but people will get on YouTube, get really upset and passionate about pretty trivial things. And so I would get flamed in the comments if I made the recipe wrong or something. And then I would have people just generally upset that I would sell information. A lot of people would just see that as a big no-no. Like, how could you possibly sell this? Especially in a niche like an enthusiast niche, the beer market. People are a little bit touchy about that. So yeah, I certainly had my fair share of haters, but no one saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing that as a career or a business, fortunately.
Right. So how did you overcome that? Because there's people who maybe they have support in their career, but when they see those comments online, when they see the haters, they are like, oh no, am I doing something wrong? Maybe I should adjust my approach, my market. Like maybe I should change. Maybe I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So how did you learn to just let that roll off of you or not give it any credence? Like, how did you move past that and say, look, I'm doing me, you do you. And if you don't want to do it, whatever. If you want to post crappy things, that's fine too, whatever.
Yeah. So a big part of it was looking to mentors. So looking to people who either mentors I knew personally or mentors from a distance who I just followed online, who were a few steps ahead of me or many steps ahead of me and had way more haters than me, and seeing them talk about it. I remember, I think it was Ramit Sethi, if you know who he is.
Heard of him.
Yeah, and he had his own version of, have you seen Mean Tweets? I think that's what it's called, on Jimmy Fallon, one of those late night talk shows.
Yeah.
President Obama will be on there reading all the mean tweets about him, and he makes it funny. So Ramit did something like that. I think it was him and maybe James Altucher, and they were reading all the tweet. It was like this funny, they were sitting around a fireplace drinking whiskey or something and reading some of the hateful comments on their YouTube videos. So I'm a big fan of humor, so I've used humor to approach it. And you just kind of have to laugh at them. It's silly, right? And I don't take it personally. And I realize that they only see a sliver of me in my personality, right? Like they saw maybe just the first 3 minutes of that YouTube video, and that's all they know about me, right? So I have a lot of empathy too.
Yeah, I think I love that. I think that, and that's really the whole purpose of my book, or one of the major purposes of my book, is exactly that. How do you like gain perspective of what's really happening? So often in our world today, we get sucked into like, oh, this is such a big deal on Facebook. It's like, no, like literally in 2 days, nobody's going to remember this thread even happened. And so
Right.
we've got to keep in perspective there, how much they know about you. It's not an attack on you. It's an attack on their perception of what's happening, which is entirely different than on you. So I love that. What would you say your secret, if you had like a specific habit, mindset, or behavior that you have participated in regularly to build your legacy, what would you say that is, and how could we adopt that into our lives?
Yeah, so it's really, I'm a big fan of positive habits. So having a strict morning routine, having a strict nighttime routine, and then self-reflection. Am I improving? Going back to what I said earlier, am I a better person than I was yesterday? Am I smarter than I was yesterday? Am I more skilled in this area than I was yesterday? And if you just do that day in and day out, I forget what the exact numbers are, but I think if you improve 1% each day after 70 days, then you're like twice as good as you were before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been the biggest thing for me. Again, personal growth.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. So how could we support you? If we wanted to get in touch with you, let's say we have a course that we want to create, or we'd like to maybe take part, see what courses you've helped to create, and just take part in some of those that you've already helped create for other people. Do you have a list of all the companies you've worked with? And so we could go peruse and be like, oh yeah, he's helped. I'd like that type of course. Where do we get in touch with that, and how do we get more involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, so nice and simple. Best way is to go to my website, billybross.com, BILLYBROSS.com. And yeah, there's a bunch of case studies on there, and you can see a lot of the courses that I've worked with and a lot of the niches that I've worked in. You can hop on my email newsletter. I send out a almost daily email newsletter. I'm a huge fan of email marketing as a channel. I just think it's the most intimate, personal way to communicate. But I do it very differently than how most people do it. So yeah, that's been very popular.
Okay, cool. So here's the last two sections of my podcast are some of my favorite. So this second to last section is called Legacy on Rapid Fire, kind of like a game show, but there's no right or wrong answers, but there's 5 questions, and we're looking for 1 word to 1 sentence answers. I may ask you to clarify any one answer at any given time. Fair enough?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So Legacy on Rapid Fire, number 1. What do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy?
Sorting the great opportunities from the good opportunities. That's the constant challenge.
That is. And what have you found to help you in that endeavor?
I actually have a really tactical thing that I use. It's a formula that I discovered by Brendan Burchard. And I can't remember, it's a little complicated, but you essentially look at everything that goes into an opportunity, the resources, the time, the money, the sanity that you need to invest into it, and see if the payoff, so the financial payoff, the doors that it opens, and how it fits into your lifestyle, how those balance out. It's kind of like a scale. So it's not perfect, but it's a good framework to use to evaluate opportunities. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree that you have to have some formula of determining how you spend your time and where you spend your time. I talk about it from a perspective of you've got to become the CEO of your own life. And that's the CEO's job, to determine like, hey, which contracts are we getting in? How are we increasing the value to our shareholders? If it doesn't weigh in the favor of increasing the value to our shareholders, it's not worth my time. And being able to hold that standard to yourself and for others, anyways, it's a cool concept. I love it. It'll be a book one day, but we'll see.
I like that.
Might be a course before it becomes a book. We'll see. So what do you think the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been to this point?
Running a marathon.
I haven't done that, so I'll give you that.
That was tough. Let's see.
I think I was, shoot, I had to have been like 10 or 11 years old, and had no intention of running this half marathon. But we all showed up to support my family. My older sister, who had been training while she was warming up that day, she pulled a muscle or something, so she couldn't run. And so she's like, well, does anybody else want to? And I was like, well, I have 2 or 3 other brothers who were running. So I had, like Skechers, the shoes.
Yeah, Skechers, yeah.
I had like a leather, almost like nice, classy leather Skechers shoes. That's what I had on. And I was like, yeah, I'll run. Why not? So I ended up running this half marathon in Skechers shoes. Wow. I was like 10 or 11. I was like, that will never happen again. So I haven't ever thought to brave another half marathon or marathon, and still some emotional trauma there.
Wow, man, way to go.
Yeah, it was terrible, but that's awesome that you ran one. So what do you think the greatest success at this point in your life has been?
I would say my relationships. I'm really proud of them. I have great relationships with my family and with my friends. I'm still really close with the guys I played baseball with in 8th grade. They're still my best friends to this day. And I realized as the years go on how valuable that is, and also how rare that is too.
Yeah, I would say that is rare. That's awesome. I think friendship is one of the most valuable things that you can have, and making sure those friendships are fostered and maintained is crucial. So I love that.
Yeah.
So if you were going to share another secret that you believe contributed to your success, what would that be?
I would say listening. Listening is such an important skill, and so rare these days. Listening to your colleagues, listening to your partners, listening to your customers, listening to your audience, and like really hearing them. Because most people don't have someone who really listens to them. Most people, you speak with them and they're just waiting to jump in and tell their story and try to one up you. So when you actually flip the script and like you're actually patient and silent, like really not just hear, but like listen to what they're saying and try to connect with where their heart is at when they're saying that thing, and acknowledge that and reflect that back to them, they'll just love you. And from a customer development standpoint, like that really is the secret. That's how you get the good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I found that to be true in my life as well. When the customers that are the best customers for me, or the best clients, are the ones who, contrary to the traditional industry of how to take care of a client, where it's just like you get them in, get them out, help them fast. My best clients, I know about their kids, I know about their divorces, I know about all their struggles, their emotionals. Like, I really have taken time to build that relationship before they ever became a client, and then them becoming a client is almost like a natural progression of trust and credibility. They have a good understanding of, like, they know that I know where they're at and where they want to go, and that's huge. So I love that. I love that you
said the magic word, relationships. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
So what would you say if you had to choose 2 or 3 books that you would recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience? You think, hey, these books will help you the most with getting to where, what personal development, whatever it is that you want to put there. What would you say those are?
So one is The Slight Edge. Have you read that one?
Yep, that one's a great one.
That's a phenomenal one. The tagline or the description in the front is something along the lines of, this is the personal development book. The other one is, let's see, I think copywriting is really important, and not just from the standpoint of growing your business, but just for its value to enhancing communication. I think there's a lot of problems are just as a result of a communication breakdown. And copywriting is a fantastic way to improve your level of communication and to persuade ethically, because we're always, no matter what we're doing, we're trying to persuade, right? And if you don't have the tools to do that, you're not going to be very effective. So I think that was one of the best things I learned was copywriting, and it's been a value in my life far outside of its business reaches.
Awesome. Perfect. So here's my last question, and it's honestly my favorite. It's kind of one of the reasons I did this whole podcast, is to hear the answers here. So the question is really, what legacy are you building? And when I say that, I'm thinking like 6 generations from now. So I'm talking about your great, 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 great grandchildren. They're sitting around a table. Imagine yourself, you've already died, you're passed on, but you get the opportunity to come back and see that conversation, see what's going on, see what they're saying about you. What do you want your children to be, or your great-great-great-great-grandchildren to be saying about what you've created, what you did in your life, and what you brought to this world? What do you want them to say your legacy was?
That Frank Sinatra song comes to mind, My Way. I did it my way. And so I want them to think that great-great-great-great-grandpa Billy really lived intentionally and lived the way that he wanted to live and didn't feel stuck in any traditional path.
Yeah, I love that. That's huge. Being able to live your own life and create what you want to be rather than just living or succumbing to the dictates of what other people's expectations are. That's huge. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise. I highly recommend you guys go and view and learn from this guy. Follow him on Instagram, Facebook. Get part of his daily newsletter or almost daily newsletter. I've gained so much value. I'm on 5 or 6 people's newsletters. Ed Milet. I don't even know how to say I think his last name's Sanchez. Fire.
Yeah.
Benjamin Hardy, Brendan Bouchard, Expert Secrets guy. Who's that guy?
Russell Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on a lot of these things, and they're adding value. Like, you think, oh, well, you have to pay for everything. No, if you just like read their daily newsletters or their weekly newsletters, you can launch your business so much by just reading their free content. Like, they are years ahead of where most of us are. And so when you go into their specialty, the stuff that they're giving away for free, like, it's worth paying for. It's worth having that in your inbox every day, because just one little thing can change your business. I know that for myself, the times I've went and actually paid for coaches, even though I got multiple coaching sessions, I got multiple events or whatever it was, when it comes down to it, it was 1 or 2 little things that I got from those that helped me double my income. It wasn't all the events. It wasn't all the perceived value that I was getting out of it. It was 1 or 2 mindset shifts that completely altered my business. So if you can get those from free content to get you to the next step, I would absolutely take it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. Any last words before we go?
Take action. That's the most important thing. Motion beats meditation.
Love that. Hey, thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.